This is the CFF show. My name is Joe DeSalvo. I'm with my partner Mike Bainbridge, and we're going to hammer out a couple of more shows for you guys in relation to the preseason preview series, where we're going to look at five guys each that we just can't seem to pass on draft day. We're either magnetized to them, they're just too good for us to pass up, or we just like more than anybody else. Mike, I don't know if there's any better way to say that, right? We've done a lot of drafts since the springtime. You've done a heck of a lot more than me, but it seems like we kind of get into these discussions off camera, so it'd be fun to have it on camera about players that we seem to get almost in every draft because either they're still on the board and we have them valued a lot more than other people, or we just kind of seem to like them, have that gut feeling a little bit more than someone else. I mean, am I missing something? I mean, that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think this is the time of year where stuff starts to crystallize, right? Like fall camps are on the horizon here, but and so we'll get more news that really fully crystallize our opinions on these players. But like this is the time of year we got, we were spreading out our exposure early in the off season. Now is the time to really hammer in on the guys that we really like this year and get as many shares as possible in our drafts.
Yeah, we want to get this out as soon as possible. So we're going to do two shows. We're going to top it up. We're going to go with five guys that we can't pass on first, and then we're going to follow it up in the series with five guys each that we seem to be fading in the draft. So let's just kick off this quick hitting episode, Mike, and just, the five guys that we just can't seem to pass on draft day. We have a ton of shares. They're on the board. And our gut just tells us, no, I'm not letting them go. This is where I like them. I just like them more than anybody else. Who's the first name you want to throw out there, man?
Yeah, the guy that I wasn't drafting him surprisingly at the start of the offseason, but he kept falling. He really wasn't even getting drafted for the most part. And that's OJ Arnold, running back from Georgia Southern. Started off the offseason kind of in the round 20 range. In our fantasy drafts, and I've been forced my hand a little bit from some others to draft them even higher than round 20 where I was getting them earlier. But there's a lot of things to like in this scenario. Remember just the last 2 and 3 years where we were drafting Jalen White, right?
That's right.
Round 5, round 6, like we were so enamored with this guy to drafting him so early. So why not OJ Arnold? If you look back at his stats, like I think 2 of the last 3 years he had a better yards after contact average. I think each of the last 3 years he's had at least the same yards per carry average or a better yards per carry average than Jalen White. They get four guys back on the offensive line who started at least 6 games last year. And this is the biggest point for me with OJ Arnold. In this era of the transfer portal, they didn't bring in a single running back from the transfer portal. To me, that signifies that OJ Arnold is the leader in the clubhouse and he will get RB1 carries for this team.
Yeah, I like that. The first one for me, the guy that I can, and he's pretty high up there, at least on my list, is Jaden Mayava, the quarterback at USC. And this was something that you and I talked about. I kind of expanded on this a little bit in the schedule analysis show that I just recorded, but the reason why I like him is because we put so much weight in the beginning of the season, especially in head-to-head leagues, right? And so you want to get out of the gate really fast. And the thing you have to watch out for are, those group of five teams that start out with those really tough schedules, because then you just want to get into conference play, whether you're talking about Sun Belt, Conference USA, MAC, right? The reason why I like Jaden Mayava a lot is because the beginning of the season schedule, they get Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue, then they get Michigan State at home and they go to Illinois, which I don't know if that's a tough game either. So those are 5 games right there. 5 games is a half of a regular season schedule, thinking about maybe there's only 12 weeks, maybe 11 in a college fantasy football regular season. I just think you got 5 really good matchups to start the year. So I seem to be on him a little bit more, and I just can't pass him because I really value a fast start in college fantasy football, and that's why I like Jaden Mayava. I love the first 5 weeks of the schedule, and for me, he just seems to be out there every time. I cannot pass on him at the value that I get on him.
Yeah, can't go wrong with a Lincoln Riley quarterback, can you?
No, you can't. And I think sometimes and there's going to be a theme to some of the players that I look at on this list. But great point. What about player number 2 for you?
Jackson Arnold, he's another guy that's just kind of creeping up with the ADP, not just me, but others. You see him in these underdog drafts that are occurring right now, too, and you're having to go up a few rounds now to get him. We've talked at length about just the receiving core that Auburn's bringing back this year with Cam Coleman and then bringing in Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. That alone should help. Jackson Arnold's production. I mean, Hugh Freeze kind of on the hot seat this year, or I shouldn't say kind of, he is on the hot seat this year. A lot of pressure there to win at Auburn. But you look at his track record over the years for producing elite level fantasy quarterbacks, and in the last 8 seasons, he's produced three or helped produce three top 10 CFF quarterbacks. There's 3 other seasons where the QB1 finished in the top 50 in CFF. So, and this is kind of my biggest overall point with Jackson Arnold is that if Peyton Thorne can finish as QB 48 in CFF, why can't Jackson Arnold, a former 5-star with elite weapons at receiver, why can't he at least match that, if not surpass that? So we know he's a dual threat. We know he's got a big arm, plenty of weapons. So yeah, he's a guy that I've been selecting as my QB2, QB3 in drafts.
Yeah, it's a good point. My second player is Tre Wisner, Mike. And the reason why I go with Tre Wisner is that when I look at the players on my board, once when I get outside of the top 5 or 6 picks for me, it seems like I may be getting him before other people. Maybe I have a lot more value attached to him, but I almost value him once when you get past Darius Taylor, Desmond Reed, and Dylan Edwards on that list. Arguably, maybe Bryson Washington, Al Henderson in full FBS formats. I like Wisner up there, and I think so much attention is being given to Arch Manning and him coming in at quarterback. You've got Emmett Mosley they brought in. You got DeAndre Moore. You got Ryan Wingo. There's so much attention being given to that I think we overlook Tre Wisner. And I remember when you and I were having conversations in the spring, it was just like, is CJ Baxter going to be back? How impactful is he going to be? But everything that we kind of seeing and reading up until this point has been like Tre Wisner's probably going to be the guy. And I think what we can't forget about is Steve Sarkisian's utilization of his RB1 in that offense. If he can find the right guy that's a 3-down back, he will feed that back. And we saw what they did last year when they were kind of changing some things up and using both guys. But Wisner proved that he could handle the load at times. And I really think that he could have a big year if we get that traditional RB1 in Sarkisian's backfield.
Yeah, I think Texas is going to be at the forefront of teams that we're kind of looking at when all these fall camps start up here with the health status of CJ Baxter, what they're talking about with Tre Wisner and that sort. So they're going to be at the forefront of what we're looking at come fall camp.
Yeah, and so you know what? I'll jump into the next one while you tee up your second one because mine's Jalen Buckley, Mike. I just in full FBS formats, I can't pass up Jalen Buckley, and I know they have a little bit of a tough schedule the first couple of weeks, but I love the potential of what he can do in that offense if his utilization is vastly increased. Last year, they had 3 running backs. I'm looking at it right now that had over 100 carries. You had Jaden Nixon, who's gone. He had 143 carries. Buckley had 128 carries and had 9 touchdowns. And then you had Abdus Salam last year that had 113 carries. Central Michigan, in addition to Buckley, who they have? They brought in Cole Cabana, right? A transfer. I don't know who Cole Cabana is or what he can do. Does any of us know?
Well, he did nothing at Michigan.
So we don't know.
Yeah,
So who's to say that Buckley's not going to get the lion's share of carries in that offense? And if you're going to tell me he's getting between 190 and 200 carries this year at minimum, I'm taking him. And I think the potential is there because if I'm drafting him, I'm drafting based on his potential. Not on I'm drafting based on his ceiling and not his floor. I like to swing big in drafts, and that's why I'm big on Jalen Buckley, and he seems to be there every draft. Where I have him valued, I guess I'm just higher on him than most. What about your third player, man?
Yeah, this is a guy that I talked about a few times for our underdog shows that Jack Velling for Michigan State. He is one like just across all positions. I think he's one of the best deals. Not only in CFF but in those underdog drafts. He's going 7, 8 rounds after some of those, top 2 to 3 tight ends like Stowers and Sadiq. So, people don't realize. I know it was a bust last year, transferring over from Oregon State, but I think something that people don't realize is he had more targets and more receptions last year than he did in 2023 with Oregon State, where he finished as a top 12 fantasy tight end. So, I think we're all kind of assuming that Aiden Childs is going to take a step forward, that offense as a whole probably takes a step forward this year 2 under Jonathan Smith. So, if he just stays static with his targets and receptions, like double or not double, he had 1 touchdown reception last year. But if he gets closer to that 8 touchdown mark that he had in 2023, he is a legit top 10, top 12 fantasy tight end option.
Yeah, it was something that we've touched on a previous show. I think one, Aiden Child's development at quarterback is definitely going to help Velling, right? You would think that the efficiency on the completion percentage to him would hopefully improve this year too. And I think just by law of averages, if he were to get that many targets again, I think we can see that touchdown total creep up there. So I think you're right on there with Jack Velling. Who you got next on your list?
Yeah, this is not necessarily a single player, but a situation. I'm always trying, it doesn't always happen, but I'm trying to leave my drafts, the majority of my drafts, with at least one player in the Kansas State backfield, whether that is quarterback Avery Johnson or running back Dylan Edwards. If you look at just last year between Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens, that duo combined for 87% of their rushing touchdowns last year. And it's not just a 1 year thing, right? It is a consistent trend under Chris Kleiman and his coaching staff and that system, is that the quarterback and running back, and specifically for Kansas State, it's the running back one. It's not just like across all running backs. It is typically the RB1 and the quarterback that are dominating the touches in the backfield. So if I'm not a top 5 pick and can't get Dylan Edwards, I'm going to try and nab Avery Johnson at some point in the 4th, 5th round, just so I can secure one of those very enviable spots in that Kansas State backfield.
Man, Dylan Edwards is one guy that I'm missing out on in every draft. I don't have much of him at all, man. It's like I do love me some Darius Taylor. I love me some Minnesota running backs, right? But Edwards has been the one guy that I've been missing on. I've just been at that part of the draft where I've either been up, just high enough to where I just avoid him on the front end, and on the back end, I just miss him. And he's the one guy that I wish I had more shares of.
Well, then I would say just follow my logic and nab Avery Johnson in round 5 then.
Yeah, so I'll go to my 4th name. Josisa Trader, JoJo Trader, the wide receiver for Miami, Mike. And the reason why is that we know how much attrition Miami has had at wide receiver, right? And then they bring in Carson Beck, and the question is, who's going to be wide receiver one there? They bring in CJ Daniels from LSU. I mean, he was average last year at best at LSU, right after having a good season in 23 at Liberty. Yep. They bring in Tony Johnson as a transfer. You hear all the shows that we talk about how it's time for some of this young talent on the Miami, roster to kind of make a step up. And I kind of feel like that needs to be the case at receiver. And if I feel that there's a breakout candidate on that roster, I feel it's Trader. And the reason why he's on this list is because I'm kind of taking all of that in, and he seems to be a lot lower, or going off the board a lot lower in drafts, when it's like, okay, here's the value here. I've got to take him. I just can't pass him up. He's not my wide receiver one, but I'm getting him in some drafts as maybe even wide receiver 3 and 4. So he seems to be a guy that I have a ton on my roster. But once when that draft gets so long in the tooth, I'm not passing him up. I want potentially the wide receiver one in that Miami offense.
Yeah, and I think that's another player who, like, once Miami fall camps start ramping up here, like if we see that name pop, I think you're gonna have to jump up multiple rounds to beat out others to try and draft them.
Yep. And then the last one that I have before we get into your final one, and this is interesting because this is one that I've started getting on a lot recently as we've done some drafts where he's just hanging out there, and I look at his touchdown totals from last year, and I just can't avoid him. But Carson Hansen, the running back from Iowa State, look, I know we've got back that quarterback. They have to revamp the receiving core, but they brought in two decent transfers. But, it kind of goes back when we look at a Lincoln Riley quarterback. We look at a Steve Sarkisian running back. And there's just something inside of me. I know they got a Busama there in the backfield, but there's just something inside of me that Hanson's built to hammer that ball around the goal line. So I could still see him getting double digit touchdowns. But a lot of the stuff that I read, Mike, there's talking about him being a more complete back for 2025. There's this little feeling inside of me that I think Hanson's 1,000 yard, 12 touchdown back this year at Iowa State, and he's just on the board a lot longer than I thought. And it's like, okay, here's the value. I cannot pass up a guy who possibly could give me a touchdown every week.
Yeah, I'm with you in the sense that, like a play, I'm not going up specifically to grab Carson
Yep.
Hansen, but if he falls to me in round 12, round 13, like I know it's been kind of a wasteland the last few years for Iowa State, but it is still Matt Campbell, and typically they will produce a fantasy relevant running back. So like it just gets to a certain point. Like I'm gonna take you if you're a round 12 player, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we're doing the tadpole drafts right now. Just a little bit of a reference. I got Carson Hansen. What is it? In the draft. I got him really late. I'm trying to pull it up and get the rounds, but man, it was pretty late when I got him, Mike. And to that point, JoJo Trader as well in like the 11th round, right? So Carson Hansen, 8th round, JoJo Trader in the 11th round. I just love the value I can get for them right there as my running back three.
Yep, absolutely.
Who's your
For
last player?
Yeah, I'm going with Derek McFall from SMU. We kind of talked about him over the weekend. I sent you a podcast from the SMU beat writer. And essentially what it said, the writer said was McFall is, maybe it's a small lead, but he does have the lead heading into fall camp here. And basically what he said is if there is a guy in the room in that backfield that is going to be at the level of oh boy. Oh, now I'm now
well,
forgetting
he
his
used
name.
I know which one you, and he also referenced that if there's going to be a 3 down back,
Yes.
this is the guy that's most likely to be in the Mustangs offense, that like Brashard Smith.
Thank you. Yes. I plan on talking about a player and then I forget who I'm talking about. Yes.
You know what you need a drink, man. You
Yeah,
do better when you drink.
I got water here. Yeah, if there is going to be a guy that is Brashard Smith like, it is going to be Derek McFall. If it's not Derek McFall, there's more likelihood that it's going to be a committee in that SMU backfield. So that's a guy who was going late teens, early 20th round. Now it's kind of creeping up there, mid-teens in drafts. And I think at this point, it's safe to say that we are not going to see Fantrax change his designation. I think he's still going to have dual eligibility at running back and wide receiver. And if he lands that RB1 job, that could be invaluable to your roster with that versatility.
In the draft I was just in with him carrying that wide receiver designation, I passed on him in 4 different rounds thinking I'm going to go ahead and take him here. I just have not been able to pull the trigger. I'm just so turned off by the fact that they brought in TJ Harden from UCLA. And I'm just scared that it's going to be a split backfield. That's the only reason why I've stayed away from him. But that's a great point. Super high upside with the position designation that you've got there. So I really like that list. So that's going to do it. Those are the 5 guys that Mike and I have had a hard time staying away from in our drafts because either we like them more than anybody else or the value is just too good to pass on. So that's going to do it for this show. We got some names out there. Hopefully that helps for your drafts. And when we see you next time, we're going to talk about players that we're fading in our drafts. We're going to give you 5 names each. So for Mike Bainbridge, my name is Joe DeSalvo. We will see you on the next show.